In this video, we'll take a closer look at what the 2024 electoral landscape might reveal if current polls are underestimating Donald Trump's support, as they have in previous elections. We'll examine the swing states that have shown polling inaccuracies in the past and explore the potential effects these errors could have on the upcoming election. Is it possible for Trump to surprise us again and secure wins in pivotal states? Join us to discover how the electoral scenario could change if history repeats itself with polling inaccuracies. Starting on the West Coast, Washington and Oregon are predicted to favor Kamala Harris, though they may not be as solidly Democratic as in past years. California is still expected to be a stronghold for the Democrats. Moving to Nevada, the race appears much closer. Trump is currently leading in the polls here, despite the state favoring Democrats since 2008. In 2020, the polls undercounted Trump's support by nearly 3 points. A similar misstep in 2024 could see Nevada tipping towards the Republicans, altering its usual stance on our electoral map. Arizona presents itself as a key battleground, even more so than in the last election. Polls in 2020 overestimated Biden's advantage by 2.3 points, with him winning by only a slim margin of 0.3%. Current polls show Harris slightly ahead by 1.3%, but correcting for the previous polling error would give Trump a slight edge of about 1%, potentially marking his second conquest on the map and indicating a major shift in this crucial state. Turning our attention to Colorado and New Mexico, both were comfortably won by Biden with double-digit leads in 2020. This year, however, the margins are expected to shrink. Colorado is likely to remain blue, but with a reduced lead. New Mexico is becoming slightly more competitive. The most recent polls show Harris ahead of Trump by 7 points. Considering a similar underestimation of Trump's support by 0.9% as in the last election, Harris's lead could decrease to just over 6 points, categorizing New Mexico as leaning Democratic in 2024. In 2020, the electoral forecasts in Texas didn't quite hit the mark. They suggested a tight race, showing Trump ahead by just over a point, and some even had Biden in the lead. However, echoing the surprises of 2016, the actual results saw Trump comfortably ahead by 5.6 points. Fast forward to predictions for 2024 and adding a similar error margin of 4.5% to Trump's existing 10-point lead could see him winning Texas by a significant 14.5 points. While this doesn't solidly secure Texas in his camp, it certainly underscores a robust showing. Turning our attention to the states firmly backing Trump, we start in the West with Utah, Wyoming, Idaho, and Montana. Then journey through the Dakotas, sweep across Nebraska's majority, and travel down through the Midwest and South, including Kansas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, South Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia, Indiana, Ohio, Iowa, Missouri, and finally to Alaska. These regions are Republican bastions where Trump is anticipated to clinch overwhelming victories. On the other side, Kamala Harris is poised for a strong showing in Hawaii, anticipated to lead by a margin of at least 15 points. Additionally, Nebraska's 2nd congressional district, which flipped from Trump in 2016 to Biden in 2020, appears to be leaning towards Harris for the 2024 election. The district's urban areas, particularly Omaha, are more Democrat-friendly, hinting that it might stay with Harris in the upcoming vote. The Midwest emerges as a critical battleground for the 2024 election. For Kamala Harris, clinching Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania is crucial. These states have historically been decisive in determining the presidency, and 2024 will be no exception. Harris's campaign will likely concentrate its efforts here, aiming to secure the necessary 270 electoral votes for a victory. This region is set to be fiercely contested, where the strategies deployed could very well tip the scales in this high-stakes electoral battle. Over recent election cycles, polling accuracy in the Midwest, especially in states like Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, has proven unreliable. Polls in both 2016 and 2020 showed stronger Democratic support than what actually materialized on Election Day. For instance, Hillary Clinton was favored to win Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania with a solid lead in 2016. However, in a surprising turn of events, Donald Trump captured all 3 states, clinching his presidential win. Fast forward to 2020, Joe Biden did manage to win these states, but by much slimmer margins than polls had predicted, revealing that Democratic support was again overestimated. This pattern of polling inaccuracies reveals a consistent underestimation of Republican support in the Midwest, underscoring the importance of interpreting these polls with caution for future elections. Specifically, in Wisconsin, polling errors have been notably significant. In the 2020 elections, the polls predicted a substantial lead for Biden by as much as 7.8 percentage points, but he only narrowly secured the state by 0.6%, an even tighter margin than Trump's victory in 2016. This trend highlights the need for careful scrutiny of polling data in these pivotal states. Looking towards the 2024 elections, Kamala Harris is ahead in the polls by a modest 3.2%, a figure that's slightly lower than Biden's lead at the same point in 2020. Considering past inaccuracies in polling, if we adjust for these previous overestimations, Donald Trump could potentially secure a win in Wisconsin by about 4.6%. This adjustment would categorize Wisconsin as leaning Republican on our electoral map, while Illinois is expected to stay firmly in the Democratic camp. In Michigan, the story of underestimating Republican support continues. In 2020, polls showed Biden with a strong lead of 7.9 percentage points throughout the campaign. However, the actual vote count revealed a much closer race, with Biden's win margin at only 2.8%, a stark difference of 5.1 points from the predictions. As we approach the 2024 election, current polls indicate Harris holds a lead of 2.9% in Michigan. But if we apply the lessons learned from previous polling errors, Trump might be poised to clinch Michigan by approximately 2.2%, which would tilt Michigan into the lean Republican category for this election cycle. Moving to Pennsylvania, the accuracy of polling data here has historically been slightly better than in other crucial Midwestern states like Wisconsin and Michigan. Nevertheless, Democrats were still overestimated by 3.5 points in the 2020 elections. Currently, Harris holds a modest lead of 2.3% in the polls. Adjusting for similar polling discrepancies as observed in the last election, Trump might be positioned to edge out Harris by about 1.2% in Pennsylvania for the 2024 election. This shift could categorize Pennsylvania as leaning Republican, highlighting its potential as a pivotal state in the upcoming electoral battle. If previous polling errors are any indication, Trump could maintain a slight advantage here. Heading over to the Northeast, the political landscape remains largely favorable for Harris. States such as Vermont, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Maryland, and the District of Columbia, along with Maine's 1st Congressional District, are securely in Harris's camp. Additionally, while New Jersey and Delaware present slightly more competition, they are still expected to lean heavily Democratic. New York, often seen as a Democratic stronghold, faces a tighter race this election than any since 1988. This shift in competitiveness is largely due to the fallout from Andrew Cuomo's resignation, coupled with the declining popularity of Governor Kathy Hochul and New York City Mayor Eric Adams. Polls currently give Harris a 14-point lead in New York. However, given that the 2020 polls overestimated Biden's support by 6.3%, Harris might see a much closer race, potentially winning by just 7.7 points, which suggests New York could be a likely blue state, but not as solidly as before. Over in New Hampshire, Harris appears to have a lead of 6 to 7 points according to the latest polls for the 2024 election. Yet, it's important to remember that in 2020, the polls overstated Biden's support by 3.7 percentage points. Although Biden eventually won New Hampshire by 7.4%, the initial predictions had him doing even better. Adjusting for similar polling inaccuracies, Harris could be on track to win New Hampshire by a margin of about 3.3%, positioning it as a lean blue state. This trend aligns with the close results seen in 2016 when Clinton won the state by just over a third of a percentage point. In the Northeast, let's consider the state of Maine, where the current polling shows Harris with a 9-point lead. However, reflecting on the 2020 elections where Biden's support was overestimated by 4 points, a similar adjustment suggests Harris might win Maine by a reduced margin of 4 points. This places Maine in the lean, Democratic category for the upcoming election. Furthermore, Maine's 2nd Congressional District, known for its Republican leanings, is anticipated to stay firmly in Trump's favor. Virginia is shaping up to be unexpectedly competitive this election cycle. Despite a robust win by Biden in 2020, Harris holds a thin lead of just 0.6% in current polls. Accounting for a previous overestimation of Democratic support by 1.7%, Trump is positioned to potentially secure Virginia by a margin of 1.1%, highlighting the state's shifting dynamics and placing it as a tilt Republican state on the electoral map. North Carolina continues to be a battleground state, with past polling errors showing a misjudged lead for Biden in 2020. Trump won the state by 1.3%, while the polls were off by 3.1%. Now, with Trump leading by 0.9% in the latest polls and correcting for past inaccuracies, he could extend his lead to about 4%, reinforcing North Carolina's lean towards the Republican side. Georgia's polling has been more accurate in recent times. Currently, Harris has a slight edge of 0.2% in the polls, but considering past polling discrepancies, Trump is favored to overtake by about 0.8%. Georgia is expected to stay with Trump, given his strong showing in 2016 and a narrow defeat in 2020 under difficult circumstances. In Florida, the 2020 polls wrongly favored Biden, yet Trump triumphed by a margin of 3.4%. With a recent rightward shift in the state, and Trump currently leading by 6 points, he is expected to secure Florida by an impressive 12 percentage points in the 2024 elections, reinforcing its status as a non-battleground state. Completing our overview of the electoral landscape, Minnesota appears likely to lean towards Harris, particularly as she has chosen the state's governor, Tim Walz, as her running mate. This strategic move could solidify her support in a state known for its Democratic leanings.